Welcome in to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. A podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and those who cover the NBA on a daily basis. It's time to flock up. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. Gus Kattengell here with you, along with Jim Eichenhofer. Pelicans won in Portland back on Friday by 2 points. Yesterday, they started out 8-0, and things looked like they were going in the right direction, Jim Eichenhofer, and then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened. What happened with that game yesterday? As they trailed by as many as 20 most of that game.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things went in the wrong direction. I thought it was interesting. After Friday, I thought that Portland was going to come out one of two ways. They were either going to say, you know, we played them really tough Friday and we still lost, so that's discouraging, or we did a lot of things well. We should have won the game. Let's come out and play ferocious and try to get our first win of the season. And unfortunately for the Pelicans, the latter of those two scenarios played out. They looked like they were very motivated to try to win. I thought Portland was very motivated Friday as well, after they had lost by, I think, 35, 36 points against Golden State on Wednesday. So, I mean, it just seemed like they had the upper hand against the Pelicans in both games in intensity and hustle plays. But fortunately for the Pelicans, on Friday, they were able to do just enough to be able to get the win. But then Sunday, I mean, a lot of the things that were going in the wrong direction sprung up again Sunday, and then you end up losing by 20 plus.
Yeah, 125-103 was the final. We're going to break this down here a little bit. The issues that are, again, I know it's early, and I don't want to say issues, but it is something that I guess is kind of pointing out a little bit here in a number of areas. One, including to me, when I look at that box score, Jim, it's the three-point shooting. You cannot win anything, much less an NBA game, making one three-point bucket at halftime. They were 1 of 13, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, you're right. If you shoot threes with the amount of threes that every team in the league takes right now by necessity, if you have a really atrocious half or a really bad game, I mean, they still ended up having a bad game, even though they shot threes better in the second half on Sunday, you're going to be in trouble. Yeah, we're gonna break that down and look at that a little bit more closely. I think the thing about three-point shooting, though, is there's definitely an element of it that you can control in terms of Willie Green's talked a lot about the quality of threes that you get. Is it a drive and kick? Is it a guy wide open? Is it a catch and shoot? Is he spotting up? Is he trying to pull up and shoot off the dribble? There's all these factors, but we also have seen a bunch of times in the past where it just fluctuates from game to game. The word I use a lot is volatility. So the teams that start off the season really poorly, that doesn't mean that's going to continue, and the teams that are red hot the first week of the season, they're probably not going to be able to sustain that either. So it seems to kind of level off and kind of find the middle somewhere. But, you know, like I said, we'll get into that a little bit more in the next segment.
Yeah, no doubt. And also, of course, we're going to have a player to watch and a player of the week. That's coming up a little bit later here as well. But in case you missed it, I don't blame you. I get it. You were either at the Taylor Swift concert with Jim Eichenhofer, went all 3 nights, and he did dress up. I'm just letting you know. A different outfit for a different album. There was a Saints game going on. There was NFL. I understand that. Or if you were watching and not listening on the new Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, Andrew Lopez, Aaron Summers, Wes Johnson, of course, with Antonio Daniels, Joe Myers. Here is what it sounded like on the Pelicans radio network.
Back to McCollum. Pick from Tice. CJ, left-hand drive, left free throw line extended, 15-footer, nothing but net. What a start here on a Sunday afternoon in Portland. Pels are up 8-0. Kamara, right corner 3. No. There's Ayton. Easy. Follow-up. 21-17, largest lead for the Blazers. Ayton already with 6 points, 5 rebounds. McCollum for 3 up top, brick. Pels are now 1 out of 6 from distance. Henderson, round an Ayton pick, stop at the elbow, up top Ayton. He is going to take a 3. And he makes it. Timeout, Willie Green. So this game is flipped completely. After an 8-0 start, you're now down 24-17. And if DeAndre Ayton's going to start shooting threes, we might as well get on the plane to San Francisco right now. That's his first attempt of the season. Don't give him anything cheap here. Floated out long and easily intercepted by McCollum. Can he win the race back? Teardrop. Are you kidding me? He teardropped it in. No layup. Grant got back. That is an unbelievable play by McCollum. It's a good thing it went in. He's in double figures with 13. I mean, Eve Meese's 7 feet tall and Klingon dwarfing him. Now Eve's got it left block. Klingon over his back. Bounce feed to Z in the lane. One dribble, spins left, floats it up and in. That's more like it, Zion. And now he's got 4 straight points, 6 overall. Zion holding the ball, nowhere to go. Get it to Herb Jones, who's been quiet as a church mouse offensively. And just as I say that, he drives in and lays it in with a left hand. Herb had not even taken a field goal attempt in the first half. He's on the board now with 2 points. There's a 3 from the left wing by Herb Jones. So on cue, Zion Williamson, Jose Alvarado, Jordan Hawkins on the floor for the Pels. We're down 20. Hey, Klingon's called for a defensive 3. If I could stand up and applaud, I would. Thank you very much. I was begging for it in the second quarter. Now Alvarado, pop a right wing 3. That is high off the heel. Meese gets the rebound, follow it up, dances and falls, rookie. He outfought Donovan Klingon for the rebound and gets an N1. Did he lose another contact? He did. Zion floats one up short, tipped up and in by Herb Jones. Williamson is now 2 of 11 from the floor. Grant wide open left wing 3. Why not? Too strong. We can't oh, it's deflected to Hawkins. Zion leaked out. And a dunk. A polite dunk at that.
There you go. Voice of the Pelicans, Todd Graffinini, in a very polite way, calling a game that went the way of the Trailblazers. All right, Jim, so let's break it down and get into not only the loss yesterday, but look, it was a win on Friday, but that was a little harder than you would have liked it to have been. And, you know, really the season started back on Wednesday with a win in the game that DeJounte Murray did play against a very game Chicago Bulls team. Mm-hmm. So 3 games have played. Just off the top of your head, I know you like to write your 5 things, your 3 points after the game when you come with us and stuff. So just give me a couple of things that you're seeing through 3 games, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I was impressed by Portland this weekend. I mean, a lot of people picked them to be 14th or 15th place in the West. I'm not sure if people realize that there's only 15 teams in the West.
That's it.
So, I mean, if you watch them, and I tweeted this a couple times over the course of the weekend, they have a bunch of solid veteran guys. They're not one of these teams that is just putting all young guys on the court and just saying, hey, guys, sink or swim. We're going to live with whatever you do. If that's going to be a bunch of losses and a bunch of games where you get blown out, then it is what it is. I mean, we heard the highlights. DeAndre Ayton had a couple big games against the Pelicans. Jeremy Grant he looked like one of the best scorers in the NBA. The game Friday, he made a bunch of threes. I think he set his career high for 3-pointers in the game. Denny Avdia. Anthony Simons is a guy that people have feared as far as a scorer, a one-on-one guy, but also somebody that can shoot threes and get really hot. So, I mean, I was impressed. I thought that they, I mentioned earlier that they seemed like they were motivated, and I feel like, I wrote about this too after the game. Right. There aren't going to be many easy nights in the Western Conference.
We've been saying that, right.
This was a good example of that. I mean, a team that, like I said, is projected to be near the bottom of the standings. In some ways, the Pelicans were fortunate to be able to get out of Portland with a split because Friday could have gone either way. Fortunately, Brandon Ingram came through and on offense, and then Herb and Zion blocked the shot at the end of the game. But in terms of, kind of bigger issues or bigger, like I said, issues isn't really the right way to describe it 3 games into the season. I like to look at some of these things, too, as more things to keep an eye on going forward. And I think one of them is we can kind of monitor assist-to-turnover ratio without DeJounte Murray. He played in the one game against the Bulls and then didn't play either game against Portland. He's going to be out for a while. I think if you look at the 3 games that the Pelicans have played so far, too, it's not a coincidence that The most assists they've had in a game was 29 against the Bulls. They had 22 and 24 against Portland, which is too low. The fewest turnovers they had was 11 against the Bulls with DeJounte Murray. They had 13 and 17 in the other 2 games against Portland. So, I mean, that's something that we're going to have to watch going forward, is that teams know that Pelicans don't have DeJounte Murray for the short term, and so you're going to see more ball pressure. You're going to see teams picking the Pelicans up at half court, especially when Jose Alvarado's not in the game, the one guy that has been, primarily a point guard throughout his career. So that's one area that I think is going to be important. They got to be closer to 30 assists the way they were in the Chicago game than they have been in these last 2 games against Portland.
Well, Jim, obviously, look, it is something that not only teams know, but obviously head coach Willie Green knows. He was asked about it after the game yesterday, about not having DeJounte Murray and the impact it now has on his offense.
It's a part of it. It's a part of, figuring out your team. Someone else gets an opportunity. It's tough when you lose one of your top guys who've been playing all throughout camp and preseason. But this is the NBA, and as a group, we just got to keep working at it, figuring it out, and we will.
All right, so that's one aspect. What else stood out to you?
I think before the season even started, before they lose DeJounte Murray to injury, a lot of people were talking about the rebounding aspect of the game, including myself. I think this is something that we need to follow and make sure that they're doing a good enough job that it's not a concern. Right now, the Pelicans are ranked, and again, crazy small sample size,
I
3
understand.
games.
3 games, yeah.
And,
yeah.
I mean, this, with as many games as are being played in the NBA, this could change tonight after some of these other games end. But right now, the Pelicans are 25th in defensive rebounding percentage and 25th in rebounding percentage overall. They lost the rebounding to Portland over those 2 games by a combined 99 to 83, and that was so much more of a problem, I think, Sunday than it was Friday. Portland had 22 offensive rebounds, which that's more offensive rebounds than the Pelicans gave up in any game in all of last season. The most that they gave up was 21. So definitely a concern. And, I heard a couple of people I talked to this morning say, man, rebounding, it's been a problem so far, and it was a problem last season. But the Pelicans were actually 8th in defensive rebounding percentage last season, and they were 10th in overall rebounding percentage. So, I mean, this was a above average rebounding team. There were times definitely where we were worried about giving up too many second chances and offensive rebounds, but it's definitely through 3 games been something that is something that they have to improve upon. And I know the coaches and players have talked about this a little bit, but I mean, it can't just be on the center. It can't just be on the big guys. People around the NBA are going to say, oh, they're not rebounding well, and it's because of the center, or it's because of their bigs. But it's like everyone has to chip in. Everyone has to make an effort to be on the boards. And if Yves Missi goes to block a shot, somebody else has to be there to pick up his guy so that his guy doesn't get an offensive rebound. And that happened a lot.
The stat that you brought up was also brought up by Christian Clark at the end of the game. Head coach Willie Green had this to say.
It was a big factor. We know that they do a great job of whenever they miss, everybody crashes. Yves was down there, deterring shots, and then we got to get into the bigs' legs and keep them off the glass. But their whole team, they do a great job of offensive rebounding. We know that coming in. But they were the more physical team right away from the start, and we have to negate that by playing with more force, executing at a higher level, setting screens for each other, sharing the ball. All the things we talked about, we just didn't go out and execute it today.
So that gives you an idea, again, 2 things that you've brought up, 2 things that Coach Green was asked about at the end of the game yesterday. So it's definitely on everyone's radar. What is number 3 for you?
Yeah, I mean, appropriately enough, it's number 3 is the 3-point shooting. Right now, the Pelicans are 17th in 3-point percentage at 34.7%. Last season, they were 4th at 38.3%. So it's been a pretty significant drop-off. I definitely think of all of the stats, maybe, this is the one that I don't want to read too much into a small sample, because we see constantly over the course of the season that a team, and the Pelicans are an example of this as well, this happened a lot last season. They'll have 3 or 4 games in a row where they're the best 3-point shooting team in the league, and then the next week they'll be, bottom 5, bottom 10 in percentage. If I knew how to predict or why it happens this way, I probably could make a lot of money, but I mean, it's just one of those things where I do think that is a little bit of it's out of your control. It's a variable that fluctuates a ton from game to game, and sometimes even from quarter to quarter or half to half. You know, you mentioned earlier that they shot 1 for 13 on threes in the first half on Sunday, but then they were 7 for 16 in the second half. So they ended up 8 for 29 in Sunday's game, which is 28%, which obviously is bad, and it's something that is going to be tough to overcome over the course of the season. But I think, you know, individually, though, that there's a few guys that have gotten off to really good starts from three-point range. Jordan Hawkins, Brandon Ingram, C.J. McCollum have all shot threes well. So I think it's going to be just a matter of some of the other guys on the roster just catching up and coming back to their norms of what they usually shoot. I mean, this has been a good three-point percentage team, so I'm confident that they'll bring that up from, you know, like I said, they're ranked 17th at this crazy early stage of the season and shooting slightly under 35%. They're not going to shoot under 35% from three, just based on the track record of the team. And if you add up, you know, all of the individual guys, obviously Trey Murphy isn't playing yet either. So that's going to help significantly, I would say, Gus. But yeah, the 3-point shooting has definitely been something that has hurt the offense so far. And, you know, we saw them score 105 points against Portland Friday, and then only 103 on Sunday. And in the NBA of 2024, if you're barely getting over 100 points, that's not good.
No, and again, I brought it up at the beginning of our conversation here. You're not going to win many games, Jim, no matter the talent that you have, if you're 1 of 13 at halftime. You're just not.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be so hard to do that. Mm-hmm. And we talked about this in the offseason. We talked about this in our radio roundtable. Today's NBA, teams like you just mentioned that are picked to finish towards the bottom of whatever conference, West or Eastern Conference, are going to have a chance to win on a given night based solely on the three-point shot. Mm-hmm. They made more than the team that has more talent, supposedly, in the Pelicans, who didn't make more threes. I mean, that's just what it is. And so how do you improve it? How do you fix it? To Jim's point, here we go again. Head coach Willie Green was asked about it after the game last night.
We have to generate threes with our ability to play with more force. And what that means is, you know, we can't walk the ball up. We got to come off screens or get into our sets, and we have to attack. When you attack the paint, you know, their defense collapse, and then you got to trust the kick out. That's when we get open threes. Offensive rebound, we did a great job of that today, a really good job of that. That's another opportunity where you can get open threes. So we'll go back, watch the tape on this game, and, you know, look forward to getting better.
So there you go. Kind of gives you an idea on that. One final thing. Here's what head coach Willie Green has to say overall on the loss.
They just, you know, they made the first adjustment, and it was just to play harder and be more physical, and they took us out of a lot of our ability to execute, and that's on us. You know, it's on us to know that we beat them on their home floor and have the appropriate fear and respect for them, and I felt like we walked out and we just didn't bring it tonight.
It's interesting he said that. I watched the game, Jim, and I don't know how you felt watching it too, and again, the head coach is saying this isn't my opinion, but I almost felt like I was watching a team that was content that they won that first game, you know? Kind of split that series, like, hey, we got one on the road already. Yeah. And it's so hard for me to say that, having been in media doing talk shows or doing this, is because I don't feel like you purposely set out on the court and be like, I don't want to win. I don't think that's ever an issue. So I liked how Coach said it there, in that it's almost a mindset, right? I mean, you're listening to him when you talk about the rebounding point. We got to be more physical. Talk about the 3-point issue. We have to play with force. It's a mindset, Jim. It's a mindset to rebound, shoot threes, or how this team has to sort of play. And it's a physical mindset, and it's a mindset of going out there and I guess taking games rather than, you know, your talent alone to do that. And I feel like that's been an issue. And here we are in the early part of the season, coach reminding his team, it's how you start the games on that. And that's an interesting aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you come out flat, and some of that is human nature. But I think the thing that you have to correct is that you got to be hungry. You got to be hungrier than the other team. I felt like in both games against Portland, if you didn't know anything about basketball, you didn't know anything about either team, you would say that the Trailblazers were more angry about what happened in previous games, whether it was their opener against Golden State where, like I said earlier, they got blown out, or the fact that Friday's game, I think Portland probably walked away from that saying, we should have won that game. We could have easily won it. There was a bunch of different things that we could have done, but we still lost, so now we still don't have a win. So let's come out Sunday and go for blood. And it just seemed like that was the difference in the mental approach of the two teams was something that was evident, and I think especially like you said in the rebounding part of the game and the hustle game, there was a couple plays where it seemed like Portland had 2 or 3 guys that were going after the ball, and the Pelicans were a step or two behind. So you add all those things up, and you end up losing by 22 to the Trailblazers.
What about Zion? Is Zion any of your points that you've kind of noticed here as well in terms that it's been kind of slow starts? Because here's what Coach had to say, and I'll get your take.
He's still, trying to get in his rhythm. So he'll figure it out. But the one thing that this team is doing is they got 2 really big bigs that sits off of him and try to meet him at the paint anytime he drives the ball. Felt like he got hit a few times. Did a good job of getting to the free throw line, but that's something that we have to keep working with our group with.
I think he used the exact word that I was going to use too, is rhythm. It doesn't look like he has his rhythm right now. And I think once he gets that, Willie said that he did a good job of getting to the free throw line. I think you get into the rhythm, you get into a groove, and you get to the line even more. And I know he struggled, especially Friday, on making free throws, improved upon that a lot Sunday. But, just from, just afar, just watching him so far, it doesn't seem like he's in, mid-season form by any means right now. Maybe it'll take him a little while to do that. We know that he was just coming off an illness where he was out of practice for a few days and then missed the game against Chicago on Wednesday. So, yeah, if you want to see if the Pelicans are going to look more like they did for the vast majority of last season, he's definitely going to have to improve and look more like the Zion that we know can be an all-NBA, all-star type player.
So that leads us, obviously, to the next 2 games of the road trip, Jim, and that is the Pelicans taking on Golden State. Now, this does not have a day off in between. This will be the true back-to-back, the old-school style. So tomorrow night, they will be at Golden State taking on the Warriors, and on Wednesday, they will be at Golden State taking on the Warriors before coming home, and there's a game on Friday here as well. So a very busy week. We're off and running to the regular season. And that's going to be tough, right? Coming back from the West Coast and doing all that. So Friday's game will be an issue. But you got to get one of these 2 games. And I think that's the thing that the Graf was talking about in the post game with us yesterday. The most disappointing aspect of not being able to sweep, you have to split here. And and even splitting is still a 500 road trip. And that's not a bad thing. It's just you kind of have a little bit more pressure here to get one of these 2 for sure to have a 500 road trip. Now, developing situation took place last night in the game. Steph Curry, who has had a great start to the season, and the Warriors had a really good start going up to that game last night. He suffers an ankle sprain. And Jim, you even had even more of an update this morning. I saw when I went to bed last night, he had an ankle sprain, hobbling into the locker room. Graf was listening to it on the airplane on the way to San Francisco. What's the latest with Steph Curry as we sit here and record on a Monday morning?
Yeah, Kendra Andrews of ESPN, who's the Warriors beat reporter for ESPN, tweeted or reported that her sources are saying that he's going to miss several games. He's going to be out for a little while. So obviously, if that's the case, he won't be on the court Tuesday and Wednesday, and the Pelicans will play the Warriors without him, which it's funny, like, how many times he's missed games against New Orleans, especially here.
It's incredible.
He's missed a bunch of games. I remember somebody had the stat that had been like 3 or 4 years since he had played in front of a capacity allowed crowd in the Smoothie King Center, not counting the season where they didn't allow fans, or they allowed them but at a much lower number. So, again, I guess he's not going to be on the court. Obviously, this makes it a little bit of a fair fight, quote unquote, because DeJounte Murray is out for the Pelicans. But the Warriors have had almost the exact same season as New Orleans so far, considering both teams started out 2-0. Both teams don't have their point guard due to injury. And, Golden State was really impressive in their first 2 games. They blew out Portland, and then they crushed Utah. Yeah. But then Sunday night, and I'm sure Curry – I didn't see the game, but I'm sure Curry's injury was a factor in this, but they ended up losing to the Clippers at home, so now they're 2-1.
27 minutes for Steph. He was 6 of 11, 4 of 7 from distance. He finished with 18 points, so that's when he got hurt. Now, by the quarters, Jim, their scoring total, 34 points in the first, 20 in the second, 25 in the third, 25 in the fourth, so they never got back in the 30s, to your point. Andrew Wiggins was 5 of 8 from distance. Nobody else on the Warriors shot more than 2 or had 2 made threes, and that was Melton, who was 2 of 4. But to your point, you know what's coming on Tuesday and Wednesday. They were 14 of 43. They're going to get at least 43-point attempts up, especially with Steph Curry out there. Isn't going to do it. So it is a bit of a fairer fight, as you said, but he's big. He's big on that team, So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew Wiggins is off to a really good start. And again, Curry's injury is a factor in these stats because he would have probably scored, 10, 12, 15, 20 more points if he had continued to play last night. But Andrew Wiggins is actually leading them in scoring right now at 19.7. And then Buddy Hield coming off the bench is second at 19 a game. Maybe his role will be bigger without Curry playing in these couple games. But yeah, they were off to a really good start. And then, obviously the schedule may be part of that as well. But they fared so much better against Portland than New Orleans did, so the Pelicans are going to have to play better to be able to beat them whether Curry plays or not.
Yeah. So we'll see what takes place. Well, also on Monday, one of the things you'll have to do is give us a player to watch and a player of the week via the poll. How can people vote on this? This is election season, so I like this.
They can go to my Twitter account or my X account, whichever you prefer, and you can vote for it right now. I'm going to be posting these Monday morning, probably 8:30, 9 a.m. every Monday, regardless of whether the Pelicans have a game or not. And right now, the leader in the player of the week poll, not all precincts have reported, so there's still time to change this. Yes. But right now, Jordan Hawkins has 47% of the votes. Brandon Ingram's at 28%, Yves Missi 19%, and C.J. McCollum at 5%. So, I mean, regardless of how many votes you get or whatever your percentage, I mean, if you're one of the nominees, and this is a committee of one that comes up with the nominees, I mean, I think that's a positive that you're one of the players that's up for this award because it shows that you did some things really well or maybe a lot of things well. But Jordan Hawkins, we could talk about him briefly. He averaged 18 points a game. He was 9 for 17 on three-pointers. He was 9 for 9 on the free throw line. And another stat that kind of jumps out that you don't think of him for, he averaged 6.3 rebounds over those 3 games. So, I mean, that was an outstanding week 1 for Jordan Hawkins. I wrote in preseason about how he's somebody that people around the league had an eye on in terms of who's the Pelicans' breakthrough player, who's the guy that might break out this year. And, I mean, through the first 7 days of the season, I think he's looking very good as somebody that could have a big jump in his second season.
Yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see what takes place here, obviously, Jim.
And then player to watch for this week. My player to watch last week was DeJounte Murray. Obviously, unfortunate, breaks his hand in his first game.
So you jinxed it.
I was hoping that you wouldn't bring that up. But no, he had 14, 8, and 10. So, I mean, that was a great debut for DeJounte. Hopefully we'll see a lot more of that when he comes back down the road. But my player to watch this week is going to be C.J. McCollum, who I thought had a really good first week. And part of why I picked him, and I'm still going to go with him even though it looks like, as we discussed, that Steph Curry's not going to play. But, I mean, the guards on the schedule this week, the Pelicans play Indiana on Friday, Tyrese Halliburton, one of the better point guards in the league, and then Sunday they play Atlanta with Trae Young. So I think it's going to be important for C.J. McCollum not only to continue his scoring. He's leading the team so far at 23 points a game. He's made a bunch of threes. He's also averaged 3 steals a game, which is something maybe we don't necessarily think of him for, but I think his defense has been really good. And so between him and Herb Jones, it's going to be important for them to hold up defensively because Halliburton, Trae Young, and then Golden State, even without Curry, has some guards that are dangerous. I mentioned Buddy Hield, Brandon Pajemski. They have a bunch of guys that are dangerous. So C.J. McCollum, player to watch in week 2, see if he can build off of what I thought was really quality, encouraging first 3 games for him.
Yeah, see what happens. And again, Jordan Hawkins, nice start to the season. C.J. McCollum's going to be needed here as well. At the end of the day, too, I do think we're going to see the Zion we're used to seeing here. Again, getting that week off and well, not off, but because he was sick, it helped. I mean, it doesn't help, obviously, and then you're sick. I mean, it takes a while to kind of get going. So let's hope for a little better start, and more importantly, some three-point shooting, man. I want to see some makes getting made. So when we get back with you on Wednesday, we'll have one Golden State Pelicans game in the books. Plus, we'll have Western Conference Wednesday here as well with Jim. And we're off and running, so we get a very busy schedule. As always, appreciate the time that Mr. Jim Eichenhofer, NewOrleansPelicans.com gives us. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Gus.
And thank you for tuning us in. We'll see you on Wednesday on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, the iHeartRadio app, or where you get your podcasts. And be sure to give Jim and Gus a follow on X at Jim_Eichenhofer and GCat_17. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.